Hi, so my name is Nay. My students call me Mr. Nay. And some of you might have seen the other read aloud I did. Today our book is going to be on Delores Huerta, a labor activist in California. So bear with me while I share my screen. Get us in full screen. Okay, so this is Delores Huerta. This is a picture of her, and the title of our book is her name, Delores Huerta, labor activist. So we're going to learn about her life. Who is Delores Huerta? Delores Huerta is an activist. She fights for migrant farmers and women. She helped start the United Farm Workers of America. So here's the United Farm Workers of America down in the corner, and we can see they are in what looks to be a protest, which is something that they will do in order to help create better working conditions for workers. And this is what Delores Huerta does. So here's a quote from Delores Huerta. "We must use our lives to make the world a better place to live, not just to acquire things." Getting her start. So Delores was born in New Mexico. There her dad fought for unions. Then her parents divorced. She moved to California with her mom and brothers. My screen for you. So we can see it says that she moved to Stockton, and we can see Stockton is really close to the Bay Area. So just a little bit inland from the Bay, right here in California, is where Delores ended up doing her work. Most of their neighbors in California were immigrants and farmers. Delores' mom was a leader in their community. She taught Delores to speak her mind. Young Delores also loved Girl Scouts. And so here we have some facts about Delores Huerta. It says her birthday, she was born April 10th, 1930. Her hometown is Stockton, California. Her industry is community organizing. Her education is, she has a teaching degree from University of Pacific Delta College. And her influences and heroes are Alicia Chavez, her mother, Juan Fernandez, her father, and Fred Ross, a labor activist, which is what Delores Huerta does. Delores became a teacher. Many of her students' families were growers, but growers paid them little money. I'm sorry, it says many of her students' families were farmers, but growers paid them little money. So growers are those who own the farm. Many of the families she worked with were farmers, and they weren't getting paid fairly. Delores knew this was wrong. She became an activist. So here we see some of the farmers, and we see Delores Huerta with some information she's holding. It looks like perhaps information pertaining to her activist work. Changing the world. Delores joined a group that helped Mexican-American families. She met another activist named Cesar Chavez. Delores and Cesar both wanted to help the farmers. So this is Delores with Cesar Chavez. And then here's Delores Huerta later in her life. And we can see she's remained an activist her whole life. And I don't know when you guys are listening to this, but I myself am reading this just a few days before Cesar Chavez Day. So it's a very good day to read about Dolores Huerta because, well, partly because sometimes women can be left out of certain discussions of heroic figures, and people can overlook the women who were just as heroic and just as important in whatever history is being discussed. So in this case, we're talking about Cesar Chavez Day. Dolores Huerta is just as important as Cesar Chavez. So we learn about her life. Okay, so Dolores and Cesar planned a boycott and a strike. Dolores shouted, "Si se puede." In Spanish, it means yes, we can. Dolores's activism worked. The growers paid the farmers more. And please excuse my poor Spanish. I wish I could speak Spanish. I do not. So here's another picture of Dolores Huerta leading a boycott. Here's a quote. She says, "When you choose to give up your time and resources to participate in community work, that's what makes a leader." Being a woman and a leader was hard. Daycare helped Dolores care for her 11 children. Women leaders were not always respected either. Cesar got the credit. Dolores learned to stand up for herself. So I actually mentioned how sometimes Cesar gets the credit, Cesar Chavez, for things that Dolores was equally important in creating. So here's Dolores as a young activist, and here is Dolores Huerta as an older activist, continuing to be an activist. Dolores' future. Dolores has won many awards, but her work is not done. She still speaks about workers and women's rights. So we see Dolores speaking here, and we have a timeline of some important events in Dolores Huerta's life. So it says in 1955, Dolores leaves teaching to work in community organizing. In 1962, Dolores and Cesar Chavez form what is now the United Farm Workers of America to help pass laws that keep farm workers safe. In 1965, Dolores helped organize a great boycott to make sure that workers are treated fairly. 1975, Dolores helps pass a law that gives California farm workers power to disagree with growers. That's important because if the growers, the owners of the farm, are treating the employees poorly, but they don't have the right to speak up, then things won't change. So she fought and worked in order to get them that right. In 2002, Delores creates the Dolores Huerta Foundation to help community groups. And she is still working with the foundation. Now she's 90 years old, and she is still working with the Dolores Huerta Foundation, continuing to be an activist. Dolores wants people to use their voices for change. She makes sure people vote. Dolores wants people to know they have power. Here's another quote from Dolores Huerta. She says, "You already have the power. We just need to come together and work to make change." All right, so thanks for joining for our story. Since we have a little bit of time, I thought I would share a little bit from one of her speeches. So this is a speech from when Dolores Huerta was working for to form a grape boycott. That means that people were encouraged not to buy grapes at that time in order to put pressure on the companies, in order to make the companies treat their employees better. And my grandma actually remembers this boycott and remembers not buying grapes at the time in order to stand in solidarity with the workers and help them get better um, working conditions. So Delores says, "We have been farm workers for hundreds of years and boycotters for 2. We did not choose the great boycott, but we had chosen to leave our peonage, poverty, and despair behind. Though our first bid for freedom, the strike, was weakened, we would not turn back. The boycott was the only way forward the growers left to us. We called upon our fellow men and were answered by consumers who said, as all men of conscience must, that they would no longer allow their tables to be subsidized by our sweat and our sorrow. They shunned the grapes, fruit of our affliction." So that's a little bit higher of a reading level, but I just wanted to give a taste of her beautiful writing. She was an incredibly powerful speaker and writer. And I'm glad that you guys joined me today to learn a little bit about Delores Huerta and the work that she did to make farmers' lives better in California. Thanks for joining.